Hi, how would you like an assistance dog? A dog that can find things around the house for you, keep you independent, give you purpose in life. Well, that's what Sarah's done for me, my assistance dog. Hi, I'm Phil Hazell, and I was diagnosed with dementia at age 55, being Alzheimer's type. And over the last, I guess, 4 years, I've had the help of my assistance dog called Sarah. She's a 4-year-old Labrador, and she's increased my organisational skills dramatically. Certainly my independence, because I can get out and about by myself, but she's really given me purpose in life. But let's have a look at a few reality checks first. An assistance dog is best for high functioning dementia. I can't get away from that. I've tried to open it up, but I can't imagine myself training an assistance dog if I was well down that line. Probably not the way to say it, but I think you know what I'm getting at. So you have to be dedicated. You have to be give a commitment for training for 2 years, and after 2 years, you have to keep training ongoing here and there. The management of the whole process is by a third party, which is absolutely essential. And the dog must be a family member. This is not a dog that's going to sleep in a house outside somewhere. This is a dog that's going to sleep next to your bed, if not on the bed. So it's going to be a very close relationship. So what are the main tasks for a dementia assistance dog? Well, I guess for me, it's finding articles around the house. You know, when you're about to go out and you can't find your keys or your phone or whatever it is, and I just go into meltdown. And I seriously, I sit on the couch and I go, oh, it's all too hard. And but I can go, Sarah, wallet, fetch. I can go, Sarah, keys, fetch, or phone fetch. I even do the bloody the TV remote now. And because I take it upstairs and do, put things in insane places. So she gets me out of the door with all my stuff. So it makes an enormous amount of, it makes a big difference in my life. Now, of course, I get out and she keeps me calm with public transport, such as taxis and trains and ferries, even commercial flights. We both fly around Australia with Virgin. We get put into the premium economy. Sarah gets the window seat and lies on an absorbent mat, and I get the middle one. So we've got heaps of leg room, and they really look after us. In fact, Sarah even takes her own ticket onto the plane. She holds it in her mouth and walks down. And the cabin crew love it. They always take photos, etc. So it's a lot of fun. But your assistance dog can also take you home if you're not far. So you can train a dog if you're half a kilometre or a kilometre from home for it to take you there or take you back home. So that can make a big difference. But for me, one of the most important things was it identified me as someone that may need some help. So I can be at the supermarket, and with dementia, it's really hard to sort out lots of things in front of you at once. It's like looking at cans of tuna. There's 13 million cans there of different flavours, and it's really hard to tune in and find the one you want. And I've had a lady come past and go, "May I help you?" And I said, "Absolutely, I'm after this tuna." And so she grabbed it for me. So it was sensational that just because Sarah was there made a big difference to me not getting stressed. So an assistance dog will give you a purpose in life. It will dramatically increase your organisational skills, and it will give you more independence from family, friends, and the workplace, and also self-pride and happiness. Now, this public access licence, this is the plastic card you can see in front of you at the moment. This is what takes 2 years to get, essentially. So that licence provides access to anywhere for my dog, except for a court, a zoo, that's understandable, an operating theatre, that's understandable. A court is interesting. I think it's around the fact that a dog in court might take away the concentration of other people. So I guess that's why it's down there, which is fair enough. No, I don't have a big drama on that. Just one thing, if you come across an assistance dog, how do you behave? What do you do? Well, I guess I like people to come up to me and ask me a few questions. And they say, how does your assistance dog help you? And I'm straight out, I'll tell them I've got younger onset dementia, Alzheimer's type, and how Sarah helps me. But whatever you do, don't interact with the dog. Don't pat it or talk to it. It might be quite a young assistance dog, and concentration is still really important. If you're frightened of dogs, it's not about you, it's about the handler. So if I'm about to get into a lift and I've got Sarah healing on the left and I can see someone's quite frightened in the lift, I'll get out again, or I won't enter, and I'll let that lift go and I'll wait for the next one so no one is stressed. And that's my responsibility, is not to have people stressed around me. It's not their it's not their reason to feel uncomfortable. I'm the one that's got to stop that. So that's important. So what do assistance dogs cost, and what's my NDIS experience? Well, I got Sarah after the NDIS, but currently they pay for money towards food, vet bills, and also ongoing training. But you really have to speak with an NDIS person to really get the hoedown on that.
Okay.
Now, when you find a dog trainer, you have to understand that the trainer trains the handler, not the dog. So you're going to be involved in training a dog twice a day. You'll have to have a private trainer in 3 times a week. You'll have to go to dog obedience school on the weekends. And what will that do for you over 2 years is give you a highly obedient dog, and a dog that will then react to what your particular needs are, hence my Alzheimer's and finding things and stuff like that. Okay, now, do you get a puppy or a young dog? If I did it again, I'd really like to get a 12-month-old lab, but it's pretty damn difficult, to be honest. I think you probably have to go with the 8-week-old pup. I mean, they bite like hell on their teeth are razor sharp, but you just have to get on with it, unfortunately. And you've got a toilet train and all that sort of stuff. And yes, it's a hassle, but it's all worth it. So in summary, there are trials and tribulations, but essentially the work that you put in over 2 years, and your private trainer and the obedience club and your carer or your family, you're going to make a dramatic increase in your organizational skills, your motivation, your feeling of getting things done, because you now have a purpose in life. And that is this dog that's going to take you out of the house, get out into life and enjoy yourself, and not be anxious and all, curled up in the tummy and, it's just difficult. You're going to have a wonderful time and you're going to feel a lot more free. Thanks, guys. I'm Phil Hazell. I hope you enjoyed the presentation.
So Phil's had a great experience with his assistance dog, but was that just a one-off? Was that just for Phil? Or might assistance dogs be able to help a whole lot of people? Hi, my name's Keith McVilly. I'm the Professor of Disability and Inclusion at the University of Melbourne, where over the last couple of years, in partnership with Vision Australia and the Alzheimer's Association, we've been conducting a trial of assistance dogs involving quite a number of people in circumstances similar to Phil's, to see whether these dogs could really make a difference, and to make a difference to a whole lot of people's lives. The basic research question that we asked was, will a trained dementia assistance dog help people with younger onset dementia sustain physical and emotional well-being and help them and their partner or carer to deal effectively with the day-to-day issues associated with dementia? A couple of important features of our study was the fact that we used especially trained dogs. And we had the dog training team from Vision Australia that are very used to training seeing eye dogs for the blind, and they adapted their training program, having spent a lot of time with a number of people with dementia and having undergone the Alzheimer's Australia dementia training program. They adapted their program so we could train these dogs in a very particular and intentional way. We worked with people with younger onset dementia in particular. Again, people who have dementia, and everybody in our trial, it was dementia of the Alzheimer's form, but all with a diagnosis prior to 60 years of age. And we looked at issues around both physical and emotional well-being, and we looked at issues for both the person with dementia and also their carer, who in most instances was their partner, their husband, their wife, their spouse. And this formed the basis of our trial. This was considered to be an important project. We know that dementia is on the rise across Australia and across the world. We also know that there is no cure for dementia at this time. And the focus of intervention and support needs to be on maintaining and sustaining quality of life. And this is where we felt that the dogs had something to contribute. Interestingly enough, before we started our study, we undertook a systematic review of the literature, all of the studies that have been conducted around the world. And while we found that there were quite a few studies starting to look at assistance dogs and service dogs in a variety of areas, including working with people with epilepsy, people with diabetes, people on the autism spectrum, people who had been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, there were very few, if any, studies that had focused on the application of assistance dogs for people with dementia, and virtually no work done on the application of assistance dogs for people with young onset dementia. Some of the studies that were out there were single case study design. Some of the studies that were out there involved pets, but not trained dogs. Some of the studies that were out there involved animals that visited someone a couple of times a week. And most of the studies had only bothered to extend their data collection over a few weeks or a few months. As you might imagine, there was a lot to be investigated in this area. So taking into account what hadn't been studied, we set up a multiple case study design with longitudinal follow-up. And we followed up with people over around about an 18-month period. And we're hoping to do some further follow-up extending out to 2 years or so as we continue with this work. We had the participants that were screened for their suitability by both Dementia Australia and Seeing Eye Dogs Australia. Our study involved multiple interviews. We didn't just ask the person at the end of the process, how was that for you? But we interviewed them at the very start, before they even got the dog. We wanted to know what their experience to date had been for them and their partner. And we wanted to know what their expectations might be of this process. We then interviewed them very soon after they'd got their dog, and that dog had gone through an initial placement supported by Seeing Eye Dog specialist trainers. And then we interviewed the person and their partner on several other occasions across the 18-month period to check in and to see how things were going, to see how things were changing. Most of the data in our study is qualitative data. It's based on the reported experience of the person with dementia and their family members. We did run a number of quantitative instruments, some assessments, particularly assessments around the stage and the phase of people's dementia, and some of the health and wellbeing interviews for those people. But the quantitative data didn't seem to capture the full story. And it was a very mixed data set because we had a very mixed group of people. So most of our study sits on the rich qualitative data that documents the experience of the person and their family carer. We had 7 women and 7 men in our study. There was a mean age of commencement into the study of about 61 years of age. And in terms of the carers, 12 of them were partners and 2 of them were the sons and daughters of the person with dementia. We had 8 people in a metropolitan area. We had 3 people in a regional area. And we had 3 people in a rural area. And again, some of these issues are important in terms of looking at how important is readily access to the trainers, to the various services, access to veterinary support and the like. But certainly I can say that the effectiveness of the program and indeed the viability of the program was certainly clear across metropolitan, regional and rural areas. We haven't done any studies in remote areas as yet, but let's look to the Northern Territory at some point. Our expert trainers with seeing eye dogs focused on a number of areas where they put in very specific training for all the dogs in the program. And then in addition to a number of these general areas, each dog was then trained to do a number of activities that were specifically relevant to the needs of the person and the family with whom they'd been placed. So what we have on the screen before us are a number of the generic training attributes that all of the dogs got. One of these was placing their head on the lap of the person with dementia. And again, we found as the program unfolded that this was a very important skill for the dog. And when the dog implemented this particular task or particular activity, it had an incredibly calming effect. And it's not as if the dog had to be asked to do this. This was something that the dog did quite naturally, particularly late in the afternoon, where some people in the later stages of their dementia were starting to get quite agitated. This is sometimes referred to as the sundown effect. The dog would quite naturally come up, sit with their person and place their head in the person's lap, and their partner would often observe the calming effect, and certainly people themselves reported this to be calming. The fetch and carry was very important, and as Phil highlighted in his talk in the first part of today's presentation, it's amazing what these dogs can be trained to find. And I would dare say that they're far more effective than asking Siri. Following on was really important, finding objects, being able to stop at a curb too when the person was out and about. And some of this came out of the training that is used in the Seeing Eye Dogs Guide Dogs training program, just reminding the person when they're out and about to stop at the curb. There was no expectation that the dog was going to sense whether traffic was there, and this is exactly the same with a Seeing Eye Dog. It is up to the owner of the dog, the handler, to listen out for traffic. But what the dog can be trained to do is to bring everybody to a standstill at the curb and to mark that point of transition from the footpath to crossing the road. And also there was some tug and response games, which were also great. So what did we find? Well, as Phil alluded to in the earlier part of today's presentation, certainly the people in our study reported feeling more confident. They were more confident to stay at home on their own, which meant that their partner could go out to the shops, to go out and have a cup of coffee on their own, to have a break, meet up with some of their friends. But importantly, people felt comfortable to stay at home, and their partners felt comfortable leaving them at home, knowing that the dog was with them. People were also a lot more confident in going out for a short walk on their own to the local coffee shop and the like, and not having to rely on their carer. And in fact, we found that some people who had previously stopped going out because they were worried, would they get lost? Would they walk into the road and not realise what was going on? Because they had the dog, they were prepared to get up and go out. But also we found that where some people had developed a resistance to going out, and their partner might come to them on a regular basis and say, let's go out for a walk, let's go up to the shop. And the person would say, no, 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 no. And it could end up in quite an altercation between the person and the partner. You will come out, won't you? When the person had their Labrador come across to them with its lead in their hand and place its lead on their lap, there were no arguments. The person automatically got up and went for their walk. So this was just phenomenal, and this story was retold by a number of people and a number of their carers. We found that as a result of this, people were more willing to engage in exercise and physical activity, and to do so on a more regular basis. And simply the activity of playing games with the dog increased the level of physical activity. Now, one of the shortcomings in our study, which I wish we'd done, is I wish we'd equipped everybody with a pedometer to actually formally monitor their level of physical activity. But it was certainly clear from their own reports and the reports of their carers that their level of physical activity was increasing over time. And in fact, just the sense of being responsible, even if the person didn't want to go for a walk themselves, having a sense that they need to take their dog for a walk was an important motivator to getting out and about. People similarly reported a sense of responsibility and purpose. Oftentimes people, as their dementia progresses, withdraw from the world. They lament the passing of their working life and many of the other activities that they were involved in. And quite often life becomes one long healthcare appointment. And what we found was that people in our project, where they had their dog, had a new lease on life, they had a new purpose. They were now responsible for something. They were no longer simply the recipient of care themselves, but they had an important responsibility to be a provider of care. And this had an incredibly important psychological benefit for people. The very act of needing to learn how to look after the dog provided new stimulating activities. And just being involved, as I said, with feeding the dog, grooming the dog, and the action of concentrating to put the dog's harness and lead in place also were identified by people themselves as very important to their sense of identity, their sense of purpose, and also in keeping their concentration sharp over time. People consistently said that having the dog provided a focus outside of themselves. And whereas before having the dog, they found themselves increasingly turning inwards on their own circumstances, maybe focusing on their own slowly deteriorating lack of concentration, for becoming more and more forgetful, becoming very self-conscious of this. Having the dog meant that they needed to look outside themselves. And a number of people even talked about how the dog provided an opportunity for them to share their emotions, share their feelings. And more than once we heard the story of where someone actually fessed up and said, I'm actually able to tell my dog a lot more than I'm able to tell my partner, because I don't want to upset my partner. I don't want to burden my partner with what's happening for me. But my dog understands. And indeed, my dog listens to me. So again, the dog we saw became more than a functional companion, but very much an emotional companion on this journey through dementia. And people, time and time again, talked about how the dog brought enjoyment to a life that was otherwise pretty black at times, and provided opportunities to experience pleasure and laughter again, and to experience pleasure and laughter in ways that people quite often said we haven't felt for years since we had our diagnosis. People developed new friendships because of the dog. The dog became a point of connection. It might have been a point of connection when they went down the street to the coffee shop and people would come up and talk to them because of the dog. And also, the dog became a point of common interest in some of the dementia support groups. And whereas people might have got together and simply talked about their diagnosis and the woes of the world and how things weren't going right for them, suddenly there was this opportunity to have a conversation amongst their peers about something that had no bearing, no relationship with their diagnosis. So a conversation around and about their mutual interest in their companion dogs was a very positive point of peer-to-peer conversation. Carers noticed that the dogs kept a very close eye on the participant with dementia. And even when the person was at rest in their chair or asleep at night, and we had a number of instances where carers would report that whereas in the past they might have had to have got up during the night to assist their partner to get to the toilet for fear that the person mightn't get to the toilet, or they might get lost and not be able to find their way back to the bedroom through a darkened house. And of course, this meant a broken night's sleep for the carer. That the dog was attentive, it slept in the bedroom or on the end of the bed. And when the person needed to get up in the middle of the night to go to the toilet, the dog would see that they got there, see that they got safely back to bed, and oftentimes their partner could just sleep on through the night. The carers quite often talked about the dog now being part of a team with them in caring for their husband or wife. And this was absolutely phenomenal. So these dogs are not only providing for the needs, supporting people with dementia themselves, but we discovered were a great source of support, and very practical support, and a tremendous emotional support for the carers. Overall, in conclusion, I can tell you that Phil's positive experience is not just a one-off. This is not just about something that happened for Phil. But through our study, we can confidently say that where people with younger onset dementia have available to them an assistance dog, they feel safer at home and in the community. They feel more confident, they're less alone, and they're more inclined to be active. We can say with confidence that in the family home, carers feel more confident about leaving their loved one at home. They're less worried about their family member when they go out and about in the community. The value of a dementia assistance dog improving the quality of life for people with young onset dementia has become so much clearer through this study, and the evidence base is now so much stronger. In our study, and as a result of our study, we're making a very strong recommendation that assistance dogs do have a very important role to play in promoting the health, well-being and quality of life of people with younger onset dementia, as well as the health and well-being of their families. And we would hope that through the evidence base generated from this study, organisations that have access to the resources and facilities such as the National Disability Insurance Scheme will step up and be prepared to fund this much needed resource in our community. So it's not just Phil that has this positive experience, and it's not just limited to the few people that were lucky enough to be involved in our study. Thank you so much for your time, and I'm quite sure that Phil and I would welcome any questions being directed to us. Do send us an email as we go. Thank you very much for your time.
Bye, everyone.